As the title says, today's topic is the German right wing, or better said, its disastrous state. I want to talk about it because there seems to be a lot of misconception, internationally and even here. I have no reason to lie. I would gain nothing. I'm just some East German shot. Firstly, I want to go into a short history dive into what happened since World War II. After World War II, Germany was split into two parts, the western, US-occupied part and the eastern GDR, which was occupied by the CCP. The political suppression in the east was much heavier on the surface. Any dissident political movement was suppressed by the state under threat of persecution, or in the ending phase, ignored. In my opinion, there also wasn't really any ground for a right-wing political party, as being right-wing was indoctrinated from early on as something really bad. The state was effectively also an ethno-state. Foreign workers that wouldn't behave or tried to intermingle with the local population were sent home. As with most of the Eastern Bloc occupied states, the cultures and political movements were basically put on ice. They would later show themselves stronger than in the West after the fall of the Iron Curtain. In the West, denazification was pursued in a different way. The population was indoctrinated into hating their ancestors. Rampant capitalism basically formed an USA light. Foreign workers, which were sent into the BRD, were supposed to leave after a certain time. They just never left, and immigration steadily increased from everywhere. Early right-wing political parties, like for example the so-called Socialist Right Party, were banned. Later on they ended up in the NPD, or National Democratic Party of Germany, while never gaining much traction. In the last decades the party was politically persecuted, as the state tried to ban it multiple times. That failed because the state had too many modes inside it, no joke. Early 2000s would show the ever so slow decline of the NPD. It had no prominent popular leader, no traction, no solid ideology, and it was undermined completely by modes. When the average person thought of someone from the NPD, it was a stereotypical skinhead with tattoos, maybe a bit fat and bad out. Later it would be rebranded into Die Heimat, or the homeland. Even though it had a more charismatic, thoughtful leader called Frank Franz, it was too late. The damage was done, and in the meantime the AfD took its spot as a right-wing party. Founded in 2013 as a party critical of Germany's membership in the European Union, the Alternative for Germany switched to an immigration-critical stance during the 2013-15 refugee crisis. Merkel didn't want to enforce a border. The subsequent unlimited mass migration from the Levant and elsewhere into Germany concluded in the gigantic rise in crime. I think everybody knows. Visit any major or now even smaller city and you will think you are in Baghdad. The AfD profited massively from it. A steady rise in voter numbers, it has lately reached its peak, as of now with 25%. Being the second strongest party, close to the first one, Merkel's CDU. Problem being, they could reach 30% and they would never get into power. In Germany, parties need at least 50% or go into a coalition with other parties to reach that. No other party would ever go into a coalition with the AfD. The Altparteien, or basically all parties, as they're called, are a deep state-like system hellbent on keeping the AfD out, no matter the price. That's not even fully it though. Let's hypothetically say the AfD gets into power. I'm certain they wouldn't be able to turn the ship around. It's a conglomeration of libcons, boomers and grifters. I could maybe name two known people in the AfD who aren't obviously libertarians or liberals. They also have no conclusive ideology, which would be needed to fix things and or gain enough traction for things to change. Remember the old meme, I just want a grill? It's basically that, but as a political party. The media, as the media does, over-dramatizes things massively. Not only here, but also in our neighboring country Poland, where people are now thinking that the Germans will soon be goose-stepping again through the garden. No, Piotr, the boomer with an BMI of 500 and prostate issues, will not goose-step through your garden. Anyways, the AfD in its current form is being led by a lesbian with a wife from Sri Lanka. She formerly worked at Goldman Sachs and currently resides in Switzerland. The other core chairman is not even worth a mention. Now they are even trying desperately to appease the deep state system and the West German lib boomer, saying things like they are not a right-wing party, but a libertarian party, distancing themselves from remigration, even though it would be absolutely necessary, nuking their own youth organization because they deemed it too right-wing, etc., etc. There are also a lot of so-called Glücksritter, meaning they are in it for the money in the AfD. Switching from the CDU, for example, trying to make a fortune out of the current popularity, saying whatever is currently necessary to gain whatever. Last year, Maximilian Krah, a former CDU member, was popular among right-wingers for saying what was perceived as more base than ours. Now that he is in the European Parliament, he's basically in favor of multiculturalism because of the law. As in, the law says that you have to have all of Africa inside your country and nothing could change that. See how that worked out? Krah had help gaining popularity through TikTok with the support of a guy called Erik Ahrens. Both later had a fallout and Erik went on to advocate making feminist right-wing politics, whatever that is supposed to be. He's now a self-proclaimed OnlyFans manager, and queer-friendly. It often happens here that there's one person who gets a bit more attention for a moment, then he is heralded as the next savior, only to reveal themselves as this. Another, maybe more known figure of the German right wing would be Martin Sellner. Sellner was the leading person of the Identitäre Bewegung or identitarian movement. His achievements are holding some banner from a house for the millionth time, grifting money, holding a banner from a house with a flare, or using said grifted money to go on a boat tour in the Mediterranean Sea with Lauren Southern. Yes, that Lauren Southern, who just had a massive fallout with the right wing. She was friends with Brittany Pettibone, now Sellner, or maybe not, because rumors started to come up lately that Sellner and Pettibone split, because that's threat-based, red-pilled and right-wing. Additionally, there are guys like Schattenmacher or Shlomo Finkelstein who endlessly do React slop content while, you guessed it, raking in as much money as possible. They're kinda like forever stuck in 2016. A lot of libertarian boomer entertainers who just want things as they were 20 years ago, as if that would be any good. Or would you be interested in a gay, dog-hating, bub-aligned guy called Blue Homer, does, and I quote, fascist politics for the 0.1% by looking like your average bus driver? Or at least a lot of these people meet up once a year in a place called Schnellroda, where they pat each other on the back and talk about their new slop book nobody outside the bubble is gonna read. Does that give you an idea about the state of the German right wing? Because that's basically it. Really. A bunch of reactionary grifters, endless boomer entertainers, and presumably controlled, incapable oppositions. I'm not happy about it. Far from it. I always loved Germany, or at least what it once stood for. What it represented. There might still be a small sliver of a chance to turn things around, but this will not be achieved through grifting, conservatism, much less liberalism, and boomer or reaction slop.
Why was able to change Europe so much and turn Germany, which had been a shithole after World War I, into this ultimate powerhouse that threatened an entire continent? It's because he was living in service to this greater idea. And when you tap into that as a gamer,